We are a couple of weeks away from summer, and while we're house sitting for our friends, one of the tasks that we're going to get to is pulling out all of the veggies that have gone to seed, all of the things that are finished for this season, so that there's plenty of space to plant new things come summertime. And we thought while we do this, we're going to chat through some of the mistakes or the lessons that we've learned from homesteading in the past and things that we're going to do differently going into the future.
We can't help but look around at this beautiful property and how well everything's been permanently built, and it's inspired us to reflect on our history of how we've ran our homestead and how we want to run a homestead in the future.
Yeah, so come along, do some chores with us, see the beautiful garden here before it's replanted come summertime. Alright, let's get to it. Come on. So one of the first mistakes that we won't be doing again in the future, when I put some gardens into the homestead, I think I really like the idea of having them raised off the ground and be able to build that soil underneath, but then also not have to bend down as often. But the real thing that I'd like to add is netting, or some way to protect the garden from pests, from wildlife, from birds, from slugs and all the other critters out there, because it just protects your harvest and allows you to get more back from your gardens.
Especially those real fragile ones, like tomatoes. We lost so many tomatoes. I think we planted so many tomatoes one year. I think we only got 20% yield, but like the amount that was going to bug life and birds was just astronomical. We were still eating tomatoes every single day. It's just not sustainable.
The next thing that I'll do differently next time I have gardens is probably put in more irrigation or sprinkler systems. Having to water the garden by hand was definitely a handful, mind the pun.
I definitely have the kind of personality as well where like one day I'll do a ton of work and another day I'll do pretty much next to nothing, or this week I'm obsessed with music, I need to do music, and this week I'm obsessed with filming, or like I'm just really a volatile force of nature, being dead honest. And routines have never worked for me, ever. And having a system where I can break a routine for a period of time, like, you know, having watering that happens by clockwork, it's like it's less of a job for me to fix something that, you know, like, and the maintenance of dealing with sprinklers, than it is to have to physically water a plant every single day.
It's all about making our life easier, isn't it? Like not having to be tied down to the homestead.
I think it's also about learning who you are and realizing what works for you. Because what works for you, like you, for example, is you like getting up in the morning and going checking out your garden. It doesn't work for you all the time, but, you know, like, you're out there often. Whereas, like, I don't step into the garden, guys, until the whippersnippering needs done.
Until I'm asking him to come out there.
Exactly. Like, I build the garden and I'm like, alright, job done, on to the next thing.
I think silver beet might be my new favourite green.
Yeah.
I just wish you could eat it raw.
But it's super easy. Guys, this stuff, like tons of it with a bunch of some kind of oil, like preferably butter, you know, depending on how healthy you're being.
Butter's healthier than other oils. It actually is.
Yeah. Sorry, I take that back. Always butter, lots of butter. And garlic and salt, and that's it. That's all it needs.
Oh my god, how do I get this out? Oh
no. Chaos.
Help. Oh, it's like a tree.
Yeah.
Feels so wrong to destroy this garden. It's so beautiful.
We're not destroying it.
Okay.
We're revitalizing it.
Revitalizing.
Spade and just like chop it. A big problem with our compost pile last time was, apart from not having machinery to help us do the composting, which it was all by hand, we did a really poor job of like cutting things up. And if we added things like bracken, or we added things that were really woody,
corn stalks, sticks,
yep,
string.
Oh yeah, how let it find its way in as well.
Don't macrame and compost at the same time.
We'd find ourselves stabbing the fork into the compost pile, only for it to just be locked in, because all the woody stuff that's all spread through the compost pile was just all stuck together. and we needed to turn it to help the breakdown process, and we just couldn't physically lift it. Having a system where things are kind of like mulched up in advance would be ideal.
And having a homestead that actually has machinery to use to make the turning process a lot easier, making you more consistent.
Yeah, because I mean the thing is, we had chooks, so a lot of this stuff would go to the chooks, but or the pigs. But there are woody stuff that chooks and pigs won't eat, and that's what we were trying to compost. And that's the stuff that would get caught in.
Mm-hmm.
See, machinery, guys. I think we've just been at a farm that's had machinery, and we don't want to. We've done the hard yards. We don't want to go back to the machinery.
Wow, look at these harvests already. Still so much goodness in here.
I think hanging out in this permanent structure is like, you know, we had a lot of temporary things, and Di's already mentioned that we didn't net stuff, but like hanging out in this structure and watching the garden grow with little to no human intervention, like, because it's all been done. The work has all been done right at the beginning. I think that is something, like a mistake that we made. Everything was temporary where we were at the last place. It was meant to be temporary, and we were experimenting with temporary, but it was a little too temporary, you know? Like, we didn't have a greenhouse, we didn't have a setup like this, our beds weren't raised, so then it was quite difficult to work in them. There's just a lot to be said for some solid infrastructure. I feel like a lot of people that work with temporary stuff end up in this realm. We had a lot of people trying to convince us to do permanent and not do temporary, and we were renting, so we weren't going to put permanent stuff. Yeah, it was never an option. We weren't going to spend money on something that wasn't going to give us a good return.
Mm-hmm. Ladybug.
I'll tell you one thing though. Our next property, our next homestead, I'm definitely going to be investing in a ride-on. I don't mind using handlebar whippersnippers, but that was insane last time. Like, I had to get animals to make up the difference. Whippersnippering an entire property is stupid.
I think the real reason we have such an aversion to temporary structures moving forward is because it took a lot of our time and meant that when we wanted to travel or visit family, since we live interstate, we were kind of forced to be on the homestead or get a farm sitter, and a lot of the time this wasn't possible, so it just made the process really difficult and made us feel like we were tied down to the property. So moving forward, I think we'll create structures for our animals like chicken coops which are stable, and the chickens can actually live in there full time if we need them to, and then we can free range them when we're there. But it means if we go traveling, we can lock them up in the coop and they can be happy in there for the time we're gone.
So another thing we've been thinking about, it's not so much their mistakes, it's more that we just know more about ourselves, and there were mistakes at the time because of our personalities, but having animals, high intensity versus low intensity, and like high intensity over time, all that kind of stuff. So for example, like having 6 chooks with a mobile coop is like medium intensity. You know, you've still got to let them out every day, you've got to move the coop, but there's only 6 chooks, they don't need much feed, it's relatively easy, but you're doing it every single day. Low intensity would be like 2 steers in a paddock with an electric fence up, and they just eat grass, and you move them once every 4 or 5 days. We like the short-term high-intensity animals, like the meat chooks and the pigs were great, because while we did burn out a bit working at that level of intensity with those animals, there was an end date, and the pigs we held on to for way longer. Like, we butchered them at 120 kilos. Like, we realized that we added an unnecessary 30 kilos of fat that ended up not making it into anything.
That's not true. We did a lot of lard. We still made use of it, and the dogs got heaps of dog food, but it did take up a lot of space. It meant getting another freezer.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, we only ran out of lard, like, it's been like 2.5 years, and we only just ran out of lard. Yeah. Like, we could, if we do it yearly, we could not raise them to that weight. It's not as intense, because it got more intense the fatter the bigger they got. You know, these things have end dates. So the pigs ended up being 3 months. We could probably make it 2.5. Meat chooks, that was 6 weeks of intense farming. But the payout is immense. The payout is a year's worth of food, so it's worthwhile. You have the ability to plan it for a particular time of year. You get those animals, you work them for that period of time, and then you're done. And I think that's what we'll do more of.
I think we'll also potentially look towards hunting for meat more often as well, whether it's going fishing, whether it's moving towards getting a shotgun to then go and hunt invasive species like deer or rabbits or whatever else. I think that's something that you've always kind of looked into doing, but we never committed to that because it means getting a license, it means having a permanent place to store things, it means learning skills that we haven't yet learned. So maybe like 10 years into the future, that would be a thing. Maybe sooner.
For all you gun enthusiasts out there, we definitely won't be using a shotgun on any deer.
Oh, okay. I won't be hunting.
Yeah.
But the reason I say that is because farming animals, so raising animals to be killed, just caused a lot of mental turmoil. It was a really emotional process, and we're the types of people that connect to an animal that, you know, care about it no matter how much we try to disconnect. And just the thought of, I've raised you to eat you, as opposed to an animal living out its full life and then has one bad day where, you know, we find it, we shoot it, we eat it. It's just a very stark difference.
Absolutely. The issue with that is it's opportunity, you know? Mm-hmm. I feel like we were much more disconnected to the chooks.
Yeah, but having like a connection, you know, like, having like a balance of it where, like, instead of raising cows or pigs, we might hunt for the larger animals and then sustain our diet with chooks or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything that you said. But yeah, hunting is definitely an opportunistic type of situation. And I do have ambition. I really do want to do that kind of thing. But I also don't know if it aligns with my personality. I don't know if... like, these are the things I've got to answer the questions to. And
if you could be the person behind the trigger?
Yeah, well, I definitely, I can be the person behind the trigger on a chook. Being the person behind the trigger on the pigs is a whole other story. Yeah. Like, I'm just too empathetic, and I'm completely at terms with the entire process and the necessary killing of them. But it's just whether I want that on my chest. Yeah.
Now, you guys know I love you because I turn off that air conditioner even though it's really hot, so you can hear me properly. So once it goes off, I'm going to tell you the next thing that we're going to change moving forward if we homestead again. When we homestead again. So the next thing I want to chat about is overstepping our skill set. Now, of course, it led us to something beautiful like our home, our bus, which will help us to get land in the future, making it easier to actually get a loan off the bank and also buy a property that doesn't have a home yet, since this is our home and we can just build slowly in our own time. But what we haven't really talked about, though we have mentioned here and there, is the cost of building something like this for the first time with the skills that we brought along with us. I think a lot of the time we found it hard asking for help because we didn't want to burden anyone, and also like just the fact that we didn't have a lot of people with professions and jobs that could help us, or at least we didn't ask, so we wouldn't know. And what that meant was we were actually impacting our mental health. We were impacting our ability to do it a lot sooner, a lot faster, and a lot better, because a lot of the time we were fighting ourselves to actually get the job done. So I think in the future, when we homestead again, we're definitely going to enlist the help of our friends. We're going to do labor trades. We're going to pay our friends to help us do the things we want to in whatever form that may be, because the impact of having someone else help you, even just being there to support you as you're doing it, was second to none, and was probably the thing that helped us to actually overcome these anxieties and these overwhelming feelings that we had at the beginning and actually get the task done. The minute we started asking our friends for help and actually utilizing their skills was the minute that our bus actually got finished. For a while there, it felt like it wasn't going to go anywhere. So definitely glad that we didn't feel like we could do it all.
I'm not saying that I need machinery. I'm just saying that if I ever have to turn a compost pile without a tractor again, I'll die.
Oh, that's so dramatic.